we can't, unfortunately, get rid of the stressors in our lives, right? We've all got the sandpaper people or I like to call it the difficult people, that in our lives, sometimes family, sometimes not. It just depends for all of us. But, that life is full of stressors, and it's really about finding ways to create balance in our lives, and to change our perception and our response to stress.
Do you want to wake up feeling like you're stepping into who you're meant to be, into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome. Hey y'all, welcome back to the show. I have on the show today April Likins, and she is a nationally board certified health and wellness coach, and she was trained at both Duke Integrative Medicine and the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. So she is an expert in her field, to say the least. And we are talking about all things just functional nutrition today and functional health, because she was kind of driven by her own health struggles with battling chronic stress and Lyme disease and endometriosis, and really a handful of other things. She has had her own health journey, to say the least. And she used this to really build the business that she has now, where she helps women optimize their health and reduce their stress levels and really just find balance from the inside out. And we're going to talk exactly about that today, really honing in on chronic stress and really what it does to the body, the signs of chronic stress, what it does to your immune system, to your gut, and how we can really boost our immune system and fight the effects of chronic stress with reducing inflammation, improving your gut health, and really what it looks like to set aside intentional time to take care of ourselves and just strengthen your overall health. She's going to give a lot of really good tangible takeaways here on what it looks like to battle stress, what it looks like to build a healthy immune system. And I know you're going to get a lot out of this episode, so let's jump in. All right, y'all, let's go ahead and jump in. I'm here with April Likins, and we are going to talk all things stress and immunity and everything related to that, because there's so many different directions that we can take this conversation. So I'm really excited to talk to you, April. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Hope. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yes, me too. So you have such an extensive background and dabble in so many things. And I mean, you've dealt with, health issues of your own. So I guess just kind of start. I usually like to save like the backstory for later in the interview, but let's kind of start there, because I feel like this is going to tie into everything we talk about. I know you've dealt with a lot of, personal stuff with your health. So can you just kind of give us a little bit of backstory about you and your training, at Duke Integrative Medicine, and just kind of how you got into this realm?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a former designer and project manager turned board certified health coach. And my specialty really is in stress reduction and resilience, burnout, and sleep optimization. So I really work with women that are very busy and high achieving, that really want to find balance, and just create, a life that they enjoy, where they can really walk in their purpose and passions. So I live in Virginia. It's really pretty here. The Blue Ridge Mountains are all around us. It's kind of central Virginia. It's a perfect time of year with everything kind of blooming here. I live here with my husband and my fur babies. And let's see what else. When I'm not working with clients, I love to write. I love to speak about, I'm super passionate about just health and wellness in general and helping people. I love to travel. I've never met a beach I haven't fell in love with. Or it seems like everywhere we go, I'm always trying to convince my husband to move there. And he's like, no, nice try. But I keep asking. And I love matcha lattes. So if you have a good recipe, hit me up. I'm always game for trying new recipes. Yeah. But, it's kind of, backing up, like I was not into health and wellness for many years. I wasn't living a healthy life. And so, everything we're going to talk about today is something I'm really passionate about, because I've walked through it. Mm-hmm. So it was really, years ago when my dad was first diagnosed with a really aggressive and rare prostate cancer that, I was just devastated. We were really close, and this kind of felt like it came out of total left field. And, at the time of the diagnosis, they really gave him a 50-50 shot at the time. And so, I was just really motivated to try to, dive into figuring out what the heck, is causing this rise in all the disease we're seeing, all the cancers, aside from genetics. And of course, the answer is epigenetics, which is our, our lifestyle factors, what we're eating, what we're doing, our stress levels, our sleep, all the things too. And so together, my dad and I really revamped our diets and lifestyle at that point. And I really believe it helped prolong his life. And so I'm really grateful for that too. And so then it was a few years really after he died that, I had learned all these things and I'd put them into practice for a little bit, but I kind of reverted to my old ways and kind of just with coping with, the grief of losing him. And I threw myself into my work. So I was really working nonstop, staying up late. I'm a night owl. So I was staying up to like 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, working, burning the candle at both ends, not working out consistently, not eating consistently again. And I had a sudden health collapse. And so it was a crazy time when I was shuffled around through dozens and dozens of specialists, from MDs to, allergists to hematologists, cardiologists, Lyme experts, a million different doctors. And nobody really knew what to do with me. And it was really, it was a really difficult time because it's hard when you're dealing with all the experts and they're like, we have no idea what to do with you.
Yeah.
It's, it's isolating and it's discouraging and it's, it's really frustrating. And so I felt like nobody knew what to do with me and handle me. And at that time, I was diagnosed with eventually Lyme disease, West Nile, endometriosis, severe food allergies, gut issues. It was a hot mess, neuropathy. So many different things, insomnia, everything kind of happened and changed all at once. And so I was feeling kind of really, like I said, in a place of like hopelessness when I think I just asked on social media, like, hey, does anybody know of a health coach? And I had a friend write back like, oh my gosh, you have to meet, my cousin, like she's phenomenal. She's an FDN and she's amazing. And so I ended up getting hooked up with her and it was life-changing for me. She was just fiercely for me, and she had been through something similar herself and had a health collapse. And that was why she ended up becoming a health coach. But I'd never experienced anything like that in the medical field, And so it was really powerful to have her just fiercely for me and fiercely on my side. And it was a huge component in my recovery in that too. And so it was kind of a few years later that, and on my journey, I was writing about what was going on and very open with things. And so people are already starting to kind of follow me for health and wellness and stuff. But I ended up going to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition really to kind of heal myself. I still felt like I needed more tools because everybody else didn't completely know what to do with me. And it's just such a fun program that I really fell in love with it and quickly kind of just decided, you know what, I think I want to do this. And from there, I just went on to Duke's health coaching program. So I'm one of the few dual trained health coaches, I guess, in the country, and then board certified as well, too. But it's funny, looking back, I'm just such a firm believer that there's always good to the things that happen in our lives. There's a silver lining, even to just the hardest, darkest places. There's always, purpose in the pain. And there's, that hardships can be fertile ground for growth and for finding, a deeper sense of our purpose. And I really believe that's about others, that we all just have something unique to give to the world. And a lot of that, our stories component, and it just involve a lot of that too. And I think it can be powerful when we find our voice and we're not afraid to, share the hard things we've been through and the scars and all of it, because it can encourage others.
Yep, absolutely. You were speaking my language. I literally just posted this the other day. It wasn't related to health, but just related to like my story through COVID with my brick and mortar business. And I said the same thing. It's like, we go through the crap so that we can help other people with their crap. Like it's, that's why we go through the hard times and we go through our trials and stuff. So yeah, you were totally speaking my language. And I love that. You were diagnosed with so many things. That's insane. But you were able to use that to make a life shift and use it to help other people. It's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been so rewarding. It really has. And again, it's like the things we go through in life that are hard, you wouldn't necessarily want to go through them again, right?
Yes, right.
But you can look back with gratitude, realizing that, they've impacted kind of where you are and who you are. And really, when you were able to leverage it for something greater to help others, there's healing in that for you and there's healing for other people too. Yep. And it's really powerful.
Yep. I totally agree. I love that. So with all of the things that you were dealing with, you really had to work a lot on your immune system, and that's kind of where I wanted to talk about today, because you are such a knowledge base on the immune system and just, boosting your immune system naturally and all that. So I want to kind of start there. And can you just kind of tell us, well, let's start with like the basics, really. And I like to I don't want to say dumb things down, because not to say everybody listening doesn't know, but I like to really break things down to people, because, a lot of times I feel like we talk about things, like we talk about your hormones, we talk about your gut, but a lot of people don't really know what that entails. You know what I mean? So can you kind of break down the immune system, and then let's just kind of go from there, and what things affect our immune system and what our immune system affects in the body?
Certainly. Yeah. And so of course the immune system in a nutshell is kind of our first line of defense with everything out in the world. And so, we'll dive into kind of gut health too, and stress and sleep and how it all plays a big role in that. But, gut health is a huge component too to the immune system, because we need this healthy, thriving, diverse gut microbiome to really be able to defend against, not only these pathogens and that sort of thing too, but to be able to digest our food and all the things too. And it's such an amazing field that we're just only scratching the surface of really gut health and all of that, and how, inflammation plays a role in our immune system too, and all of that too. And so what would be most helpful to kind of dive into first, with stress? Because that, honestly, my story kind of starts and ties into that stress piece, because that was, it was really burning the candle at both ends. Mm-hmm. There was kind of that burnout component, that there were warning signs and things along the way that kind of, stress levels were too high and out of control. And I really feel like that was just a strong component in damaging, my immune system too, that made me more susceptible to a lot of the things that I was kind of dealing with too, where, your body is kind of, like a computer. It can only handle so much before it collapses, unfortunately too. So, I feel like that lack of balance in my life, where I started living really healthy when my dad was around, and we were kind of revamping things. But then after he passed and I kind of reverted back, that, I got out of balance again. And that really created a lot more stress in my life, which caused, I think, more inflammation, which wasn't helpful for my immune system, and then of course caused the health collapse, which caused more stress and all the things. And it just kind of spiraled from there.
Yeah, for sure. So when we're talking about our immune system, can you speak to the connection between, because I'm all about gut health. That's where I talk about it like all day, every day. Can you speak to the connection between the immune system and our gut?
Yeah, well, the gut health really is so strongly tied to our immune system through that gut microbiome. That trillions of bacteria that live in our bodies, they're all over on our skin, everywhere too, but primarily in our gut. And they're so, as unique as a fingerprint too in that. And there's, we want to have a healthy balance of the kind of the good and the bad bacteria. And so for me, when things kind of got out of control, I had more of that dysbiosis kind of going on, which really revved up my inflammation in that too. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well too, because I know actually you're more of an expert in this area than I am as far as gut health and the immune system, where my specialty is definitely more stress resilience and sleep focused.
Yeah. Well, I love to talk about both, because you really can't talk about one without the other, right? It's right. Like you're saying, like it's, 80% of your immune system is in your gut. And a lot of people I don't think a lot of people connect the dots to that and think, like, I just had this conversation with one of my clients the other day, and she was like, I know you've been talking about this, like, and I've known her for a long time. Just, I know you've been talking about this for, I don't know how long. And I watch all your videos, stuff she said, but it wasn't until we started working together that I'm actually putting things together that what I'm eating is affecting my immune system. Like, you really, to connect those dots and to realize that everything is connected, and the gut and the immune system, there's such a strong connection there. So when you're talking about stress, because I know, you're talking about kind of that burnout state that you were in and it affecting your immune system and stuff. So I guess, what are some signs that stress really is affecting our immune system?
Yeah, well, stress is one of those things, first of all, I think it's kind of interesting, the World Health Organization I saw recently, where they've kind of dubbed stress like the health epidemic of the 21st century, which is like, wow, that's kind of mind blowing in itself.
Right.
And there's so many, you hear a lot of just experts talking about, 80 to 90% of doctors' visits these days are estimated to be related to stress. So it's a big, it's a big problem. And, the reality is that we live in a world where there's just stress everywhere. Unfortunately, there's no bubble to live in. I wish there was one. I would be the first one to sign
right.
But, there's always roadblocks and curveballs and, any number of things coming at us that we're juggling on a daily basis. And the more we've become connected with, devices and other things too, that's just kind of added to the stress level too. So the key really is, first, it's really monitoring how we react to stress, and things outside of our control, like traffic, for example, right? We can relate to that. We've been stuck in traffic, or suddenly there's an accident or something happens and you're late for something really important. And it just kind of is what it is, right? It's like, well, you can sit there and beat on the steering wheel and get yourself worked up. And that can, damage your gut microbiome pretty quickly and rev up inflammation and all of that. Or you can just kind of let go of it and say, I'm going to do some deep breathing, or I'm going to take this time to call my mom or whatever, do something else too. So, but stress, is one of those things that just affects all areas of our life. And it shows up in our work and our relationships. It's, it can steal our joy and our peace. It shows up in our mood, and it can really, like my story, if left unchecked, it can really wreak havoc on our health too. And like you said, it's very linked to inflammation and our immunity too, as well. And so again, like that chronic stress, can cause this chain reaction of things, a domino effect in our lives, driving up, inflammation and driving up and disrupting the gut microbiome that can kind of start out subtle, but over time it can be very disastrous. And so I kind of always tell people, think of it like driving a car that's out of alignment. Many people can relate to that, or ever having experienced that with their car. And it's first, if it's subtle, you can kind of get away with it. You can keep driving the car, not a big deal. But if you continue to not take it into the shop and keep driving it, it's going to eventually, create some serious uneven wear and tear on your tires. And if you keep, ignore that little dashboard light, right? It's going to eventually kind of tear up your suspension. And over time, it can get harder to steer and it could lead to a breakdown too. And so, our body often is telling us little signs, daily and along the way. And, it's that same kind of warning light that on the dashboard too, but we can, we can ignore it too. And sometimes it just shows up differently for everybody, because everybody's perception, so much of stress is our perception of it. And it's our response to that too. So for some people, it shows up very physically where, it shows up in like headaches and migraines, or neck pain or back pain or something. It could be in frequent illnesses, that there's some gut health kind of disruption there going on, digestive issues. It could be fatigue, insomnia, appetite changes. Sometimes you'll feel like eating more, you'll feel like eating less. It could be skin issues. And then of course, more serious things like raising your blood pressure and, increased risk for like type 2 diabetes. And then just behaviorally and mentally, it can show up with, just mood changes, anxiety, depression, increased frustration, moodiness, brain fog sometimes. I definitely had a lot of that going on in the past. Yeah. And just, affecting our productivity and, with work and, and things too, as well. And so it really varies, how it shows up for all of us. But the key, I always tell people too, is just really, it's so important to listen to our bodies, and and check in, have those little check-ins, daily and ask yourself, how am I doing today? What do I need to thrive? And the cool thing is your body will tell you. It might be like, what, we've been inside way too much. Like look how pretty it is outside. Like I need some vitamin D, let's go get some fresh air, like enough of the computer, or, hey, I need some more water, whatever it is, it can be really powerful to have those little check-ins.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I love the analogy that you're using about the car and like watching the check engine light come on, because I think that's the point. I think that's what happens most of the time is we feel the little like twinges of things like, oh, that doesn't feel right. Like, oh, I feel like things are a little off. And we just keep pushing off because you're like, you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to have to take the time to figure out what it is. Or like for a lot of times when I work with people, it's like, they know that it's going to be a process to like figure out what things are, what's going on in their body. And so they just keep pushing it off. And then a lot of times, like you're saying, you wait till it's too late. And then with your analogy, the suspension, now you've messed up the suspension, all that, but like you wait until it's too late. And like in your case with your health, you ended up with, Lyme disease and endometriosis and all those other things. Like where, the signs were there. And just to your point, you made just then, it's like, you really have to learn how to listen to your body, because the signs are there and your body's going to tell you. It's just whether or not you're going to listen, and do something about it. But I thought that analogy was great, because I think that's just, most of us are guilty of that. Is, we feel the little signs that our body's telling us, but then we just keep pushing it off.
Yeah, it's so true. And I was an athlete, a multi-sport athlete growing up. And I think, it's also something that you're kind of taught too.
Yep,
if you were, in gymnastics, or you're an athlete or what, I played a lot of different sports. And so, back then, it's been a while, but back then it was like, oh, you get a concussion, like you're fine, just dust yourself off and get back in the game sort of thing. Or, oh, you sprain something, let's just tape it up and off you go. It was very much like push through it, ignore it, just focus on the game and that sort of thing too. And so I think we can carry that into adulthood, where we just have learned that kind of incorrect mindset to ignore our bodies too. I had a client it was a couple of weeks ago. She was cracking me up. She said, I didn't realize I was so stressed during my Zoom meetings until I saw myself in the meeting, and I saw my shoulders just creeping up to my ears, and she was like, I need to relax a little bit. I need to just keep breathing too. But it was just a good point of like, often we're just not aware of how things around us are affecting us physically. And it's really important.
For sure. Well, and I think it's also important, just kind of what you're saying about, we're typically taught to just dust ourselves up. I think the other thing is a lot of times, I talk about this all the time too, is especially as women, and I don't want to like turn this into like a feminist conversation, but especially as women, a lot of times, we get the things we feel, they get brushed off. Mm-hmm. And there's actually an article, I think it was in New York Times a couple weeks ago. And it was like actual women, like women's stories about how they went to this doctor and that doctor and this doctor and that doctor. And every single time they got brushed off, and they ended up like, one lady had like severe brain cancer, and and then like no doctor would listen to her. But that was the point of the story, where it's like, we talk about things and, either we're hypochondriacs or blowing things out of proportion. And so I think that's another thing is a lot of women are kind of programmed just like, oh, well, this must just be normal, like the things that we're feeling in our body. And I've heard that before too. Like I had a call with a client the other day, and we were talking about gut stuff and, constipation and bloating. She's like, oh, but I guess that's normal. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, you don't have to live with constipation and bloating. Like, no. So I think it's the other thing too, is a lot of things get brushed off where we're like, oh, that's just normal, and it's not.
Yeah, that's a huge part of my story. And it's a rabbit hole that I could go down, but I won't. But, using endometriosis as an example, that it takes women on average 10 years to get properly diagnosed.
I heard that.
1 in 10 women have it. It took me almost 20 years, because it was very much like pain is normal, whatever, it's all in your head, that. But it was, for me, it was like on the floor turning blue every 3 weeks. Sometimes projectile vomiting from the pain, like hours, unable to move, and no pain med, nothing would help in that too.
Insanity.
So I think when I go back and I talk about that, the kind of that darkness that I was in, them not knowing, many doctors not knowing what to do with me. There was also that component of, not being believed too, because when I say health collapse, I was best shape of my life, top of my career, couldn't get up. And I was almost bedridden for a year and a half. And I remember a doctor kind of telling me initially, like, I think you just have vertigo. And I'm like, oh my
gosh,
I'm pretty sure I don't. Like,
you're like, no, this is not.
Doesn't cause all the things that I'm experiencing. But it is unfortunate that at times, women aren't always believed when there are things going on, and that can be different than what a man experiences too. For sure. No, absolutely. 100%. And I think especially with like female issues like that too. And I talked about this not too long ago, because, I'm just saying, like, us as a collective right now, like, we were raised in this generation where we were put on birth control for everything. Like, oh, you got bad skin, take birth control. Oh, you have bad periods, take birth control. Oh, you're irregular periods, take birth control. Like, that was their solution. Like, not trying to figure out what the problem was, but we'll just put you on birth control. That'll fix it all. And like, you have a pulse. Hey, put exactly. Like, hello. And now we're in this generation where we've have these like substantially increased numbers of PCOS and infertility and depression. I mean, it's like, hello, there's a correlation here. And so I feel like a lot of times with women's issues, that's the other thing too. It's like, oh, birth control has to fix everything, right? Like,
crazy.
It is. But, back to what we're saying, I think a key component to anybody listening, the bigger message is, if you feel like your doctor isn't listening to you, it may be time to go see a different doctor.
Absolutely. 100%. I mean, that's my biggest advice to everybody, because it's like, and I always say this too, with like, we were just talking about listening to your body, and back to the point you made, like your body's going to give you the signs. If you're feeling like something is off, then something is off. Like your body's going to tell you, and your intuition is going to be like, hey, like, something's not right. And if you have the feeling, then it's true. Like your intuition's never going to lie to you, and your gut's going to tell you if something is off. So yeah, 100%. If somebody's not listening, or you feel like, no, like something is off, then yeah, find somebody who will listen.
Yeah.
That's, man. And what a journey you had. That's crazy town. Like that. It took that long for them to diagnose you with, oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was a lot. It was too. So for sure. What else would be helpful? I know we were talking about kind of telltale signs of stress, but would it be helpful to kind of share with listeners practical ways?
Yeah, let's do it.
Lower stress levels.
Totally.
Yeah. I love talking about that too. And again, back to what we were talking about, we can't, unfortunately, get rid of the stressors in our lives, right? We've all got the sandpaper people, or I like to call it the difficult people, that
I like that
in our lives, sometimes family, sometimes not. It just depends for all of us, but that life is full of stressors, and it's really about finding ways to create balance in our lives, and to change our perception and our response to stress. So, the first and simplest and easiest way to really help regulate the nervous system is just to breathe. And back to my client, that was talking about her ears, her shoulders up to her ears. She realized she wasn't breathing, in this Zoom call, and I guess her shoulders were getting higher and higher, but her body was kind of warning her like, hey, I'm stressed out right now. And she wasn't picking up on that clue, but and often when we are stressed, we're not breathing normally. We're doing kind of the shallow breathing sort of thing too, which can make you feel more stressed.
Yeah.
In that. And so it's just such an effective way to quickly regulate the nervous system and, switch from the fight or flight right back into that rest and digest friendly system too. And it could just be as simple as breathing in for, 3 seconds, holding for a few seconds, and then breathing out slowly for a few seconds, and just doing that a couple of times. And that's enough to really regulate the nervous system. There's so many great guided meditation apps out there too. So I honestly don't know a lot of people that can just sit in a room and meditate. I don't know about you, but that's pretty difficult. Like, no, I don't have a lot of yogi friends. So,
yeah,
like having, like apps like Calm and Headspace can be so great, because they have short and sweet, meditations on 50,000 different subjects. And they're like 2 minutes to 10 minutes to whatever you've got time for.
Yep.
And that can be a really great way to again, calm your nervous system. And when your nervous system is calm, your gut microbiome and your immune system is going to be in a more balanced and healthy place too. Exercise is a big one that's, really crucial for stress levels. And studies are showing that here recently that it's very impactful to our immune system and our gut microbiome as well too. There were some interesting studies that even came out during COVID that said just light movement. I think UVA put one out last year talking about how light movement when, you're recovering from COVID can really boost your immune system too. And so it doesn't have to be, we don't have to be doing CrossFit and like going gangbusters and going crazy with workouts. Like it can be as little as just, just walking outside. And, the key is really just finding things that you enjoy. And so if you're not a runner, don't run. If you're not into boxing, like that's totally cool. Just figure out what you enjoy. And maybe that's dance cardio, maybe it's bar, maybe it's Pilates, strength training, whatever. Just the key is really moving daily to lower those stress levels and really just lower inflammation and have that healthy, gut microbiome too. I think it's helpful too to have a strong morning routine, because we've all had the days, right? When you wake up maybe a little late, you hit the ground running, and you're like, it's just like a crap show the rest of the day. It's a race, and it's like, oh my gosh, this day is insane. Versus, just the mornings where, you have a little bit of pause before you get started. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to have an extra hour in the morning. It could literally be 5-10 minutes where that could be, just doing a little bit deep breathing before, while you're drinking your coffee, or getting in some stretching or quick, whatever, exercise routine into, or just being strategic with your day and kind of assessing what's coming up to versus, the reacting and kind of hitting the ground running to. Sleep's a big one. Sleep is so crucial for stress, and it's so beneficial too for our gut microbiome and really crucial for inflammation as well, and just aiming for getting that high quality sleep, the 7 to 9 hours a night. And, everybody's sweet spot it will vary. And so it can be helpful to kind of, if you're not sure where your number is, figure out what number you feel the best in the morning. And so for some people, it's 7, some are like, nope, 8's my number. And some people need a little bit longer, or you'll find that there's days and seasons when maybe life's a little bit more stressful and you might need a little bit more sleep. And that's okay to give yourself that grace too, to get an extra hour if you feel like you need it too. Do you know your sweet spot where you kind of feel best sleep-wise?
Mine is around 7. I feel like I don't require as much sleep as a lot of people because I think my body, like I've tried and I literally can't. My husband's always like, just go back to, because I'll wake up early, like even on the weekends. Just go back to sleep. I'm like, no, really? Like I can't. Like I'm awake, So I think my sweet spot is like, if I get 7, I'm good.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, everybody's different, so it's great that you know what, where you thrive at too. But the key, is making sure to at least get that 7 hours of sleep too, because anything under that can really dysregulate the body and, rev up inflammation, all that too. And of course, with stress, a lot of it is just shifting our mindset, and focusing on what we can control, like we were talking about earlier. And sometimes, sometimes it's just taking a step back. If you get a crazy email or something comes in that's stressful, or a text message you weren't expecting, sometimes it's helpful to walk away or just look at things from a different angle, or, or even asking yourself, like, how can I grow from this? What can I learn from this? And just having that kind of curious mindset about it too. Gratitude can be something that's really shown to lower stress levels too, and can boost our mood. And rest, that's a big one. I feel like, we've become this society that's like created, being crazy busy is like this, having this badge of honor, right?
Absolutely.
And it's having this detrimental effect on, our health widespread and our relationships and so many other things. And just, buying into this like hustle 24/7 mentality. And that's not the way that the body was designed, and it's not been that long since, I always joke, I wish we could go back to the 90s, right? Where it's like we had, you might have a cell phone, but if you did, it was so expensive. Like you didn't use the thing unless it was like an emergency.
Right. And you only had a certain number of texts you could send every month or you ran out.
Exactly. But life was simpler because we didn't have people coming at us from 50,000 different ways and all the things too. And so, the body's just not designed to be stimulated constantly with all these things too. And so there's a lot of experts really talking about the importance of rest and scheduling in downtime and having and treating it. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, here's an hour here, hour there. It could be 10 minutes and it could be 20 minutes of little pockets of time where you can recharge your batteries. Because the reality is we can't continually pour from an empty cup and thrive. That's when burnout happens, and exhaustion and all the things too. And so it's so crucial, just find things that fill us, with joy and that recharge your batteries and inspire us too. And, there's been a lot of big medical doctors I've heard talk about recently, like Dr. Chatterjee in Europe, talking about how there's, studies have been emerging here the last few years that have shown that doing things you love makes you more resilient to stress, which is really interesting. It's really fascinating. There's always cool stuff emerging with science, and it's really interesting too. And then lastly, I think with stress, it's really, again, it's creating those strong work-life boundaries. Especially now, because so many people are still working remotely and they're working from home. And that is wonderful in a lot of ways, but it's challenging because, you're not clocking out at the end of the day, so to speak. You're not leaving a building and then walking away. Like I have clients where their office is their bedroom or their kitchen and, things like that. And you don't have that visual barrier too. And so, finding ways to be able to set those boundaries can be game changing for stress levels, that when you're done with working, be done with working, and sometimes that requires, pulling things off of your phone and apps or work stuff and different things and taking PTO. I've, talked to so many clients that haven't taken PTO because they feel guilty about that too. It's just so crucial, to have that downtime too. And just to evaluate, especially as women, I think, we can wrestle at times with people pleasing and wanting to help people too. And just really evaluating, what we say yes to is just as important as what we say no to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just because something's a good thing, it may not need to be on your plate right now in that. And just creating those strong boundaries there, and strong boundaries with, of course, the news and social media too, can be really helpful for stress levels and our mindset and all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And I love the tips about the, taking, because I think that's the hard part too, is, we're so connected to technology where it's like, and especially like, for us as, entrepreneurs who own their own business, it's like, there's never really like an off time, right? Like that's, you're connected to your friend, like my husband who, he works from home, where it's like, the computer, it's right there. So it's like, well, let me just get a little more work done. So I think it's really important. Those boundaries are so important. And I know one of the things that I did, sometime last year, just like turning off notifications. And so that like, I'm not constantly seeing the ping, 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 things flashing on my phone. It's like, that instant hit of like adrenaline every time you see that alert coming on your phone. That's been huge. And then one of my friends, and I'm like so behind the times, I feel like, because I didn't know this existed. But my friend the other day was like, hey, do you know you can put your phone on work mode? I'm like, what the heck is that? So then she shows me how you can put your phone on work mode, and there's like certain apps you can turn off. So when you're in work mode, like you don't get anything that comes on, like nothing shows up on your phone, like text. If you want to block, you block all these things, and you can like set a timer from work mode, turns on this time to this time. But I'm like, this is genius. Like just to, even if it's not all day, but like you were saying, just those little pockets of time where you're not constantly being stimulated by what's coming in on your phone, or taking, a little bit of time to step away and like take a mental break. Like, I think that's so crucial.
Yeah. And of course they're designed to be addictive, right? You get that dopamine hit every time there's the peeing. It's that kind of classical conditioning, where out of curiosity, we hear the ding or the vibration or whatever. And you're like, you want to see what's waiting for you sort of thing too. And so, there was an interesting study too, I read recently talking about how just the mere presence of phones in relationships diminish the quality of the relationships. If you could see your phone, and you're spending time with your husband, the mere fact that your phone was out would make him not feel as seen, in that, that interaction and that conversation is really interesting. So 100%. I did a similar thing, at the start of COVID. I just started putting my phone in do not disturb mode about 8 o'clock at night, 7, sometimes it just varies, and in another room. And it's so wild how when you turn it off or you put it away, the drive to check it every, few whatever seconds or minutes is gone, because it's already in do not disturb mode, or it's in the other room. And it's so freeing. It really allows you to just be mindful and present and in the moment too. And it's great for stress levels because it's just dysregulating, checking all day long. It's so stimulating too.
Yep, for sure. Yep, absolutely. Those are great tips. I love them. I love all of those. Those are so important. And it's not just affecting stress, it is affecting your stress levels, but like we were saying before, everything is so connected to your stress levels, your gut and your immune system and all that. So it's, when you're really able to manage stress and you're able to get a handle on it, it really is affecting like every aspect of your life.
It does. Yeah. It's really powerful too in that. And, one thing we hadn't touched on too, but caffeine could be another one I've seen a lot. So I was curious your take on that too, but it's like, it's anything else, like too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. Right. Yes. And it's a stimulant. And so, it can even stimulate like our dopamine levels too. But then where we crash eventually when you have that caffeine crash afterwards too. But caffeine's one of those things that too much, can really increase our cortisol production, which is the stress hormone. And that can stimulate our nervous system, and that can make us more reactive to stress. And it can, worsen our anxiety, if we're prone to that. And it can really throw off sleep too. Yep. That's a big one. That's a really big one. And I talk often with clients that they don't necessarily know how long it can stay in your system. But, a good cutoff for most people is 1 or 2 p.m., with caffeine, because it can by midnight, it can still be in your system. Yeah. And, people that are more sensitive find that they've got to back it up even further.
Yep.
I had a client recently she was really struggling with her sleep, and she was like trying to figure out why. She's like, I have no idea. I'm just not sleeping. And so we were kind of just diving into all the things, and we were talking about our diet and that. And we kind of landed on the caffeine. She's like, yeah, I think my caffeine might be intake throwing off my sleep, And so first she was drinking like almost a pot.
Oh my gosh.
And it was until late in the day too. But when she figured out like her best cutoff time for whatever reason was, 11 in the morning, like she couldn't go past 11 and no more than two cups. But man, when she switched to, making that cutoff for herself, I mean, she slept a whole lot better pretty quickly. And she just felt so much, just more rested and clear-headed. And of course, when we're rested, we can react better to stress and all of that. And, and again, getting good quality sleep is so crucial for the immune system, for the gut microbiome, and really lowering our inflammation levels. It's crazy what the body does in the middle of the night while we're sleeping.
Yeah, it's so true. It is. It is.
I mean, it's wiping memories, it's categorizing things. I mean, it's getting rid of proteins, that are linked to like dementia and stuff like that. I mean, the body is doing so many things. And there's been some interesting studies too, talking about how it's, there's maybe 30% more of the brain even active during sleep than when we're awake. So
that's crazy.
It's one of those things where it's gotten a bad rap over the years, the whole, like, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yes.
But it's really crucial. And it's a game changer for your health.
It is. And I really hate that conversation. I did an Instagram live, I think one time about that, because it's so common in entrepreneurial world. And it's such like it's almost one of those like super masculine things. And I kept seeing like all these different, really popular thought leaders, like putting that out there. I'm like, dude, y'all's got millions of followers and you're telling people like, basically like, hey, you don't need sleep. Like, yes, you do. Like, actually, I hate that conversation so much. I do think it's one of like the most underestimated aspects of our health, because like you're saying, it does affect so many things, and so many things affect your sleep. Like the caffeine part is huge. And I have a huge conversation with my clients about caffeine. I have strong opinions about it, which, a lot of times I don't like to be too rigid, but for the most of the time, most of the people I work with, their adrenals are like totally shot. And like, well, you're really damaging things even more by downing your caffeine every day. Like your cortisol levels are either in the toilet or they're through the roof. Like this is not helping either situation. So no, I have very strong opinions on caffeine. And there's always a period where I have my clients, get off the caffeine and we kind of calm things down. But I think people really do underestimate how much is affected by caffeine. And then to your point too, just how many things do affect your sleep. There's so many things, but I always tell people like, if you could change one thing, like sleep is your superpower. It really is. And that whole, like you were saying, we'll sleep when you're dead sort of thing, that mentality. You're seeing a shift the last couple of years where you're now seeing like top CEOs and you're seeing top athletes around the world talking about the importance of sleep and how they're able to do so much more when they get sleep. And it's really incredible. Yeah, for sure. I love that. This was such a conversation. I love it. And I do have one more question for you, but before I get to that one, can you let everybody know where to find you? And I know you have a little freebie for people.
Yeah, definitely. And so I would love to hear from you guys if anything resonated or anything in my story. It's always great to hear from you. You can connect with me on my website at aprillikins.com/podcast. I'm on Instagram. My handle's different. It's glowbelovely is the handle, but I have a brand new free resource that I just launched recently called 15 Ways to Say Goodbye to Chronic Stress, with all my best tips of how to lower your stress levels if you're feeling like life is out of balance and crazy. And I think you'll really enjoy it too. And again, you can snag it at aprillikins.com/podcast, but reach out. Like I said, say hi. It's always great to hear from listeners.
Perfect. I love it. That's great. And what a great freebie. I'll go download that. That's amazing. Love it. So the last question that I'm going to ask you, one that I like to ask everybody, what do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
That's such a deep question. And, again, for me, it goes back to my story. And, I think it's this journey that I've been on the last few years of finding my voice and not, hiding my scars and the things that I've been through. Because again, that so much of society is, it's the Insta culture, right? It's all the best things and everything in that. But I think it's really powerful when people are able to, use their stories. And we've all got a story, right? We've all been through stuff, good and bad. And we've all got I'm a firm believer that we're all here for a purpose and a reason in that, and that there's something that you are here for that only you can do in that. So I just would say, like, don't be afraid to leverage, your story, even the hard places, for something greater, because again, there's always a silver lining, and you never know how your life and your story can just impact and touch someone else's life. And it can, and sometimes even in a small way, it's just one small word of encouragement can change the course of somebody else's life. And I think going back to that, FDN, that functional health coach that I worked with initially, impacted my life in a huge, huge way.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's just leveraging those and not being afraid to walk in, in your purpose and your calling.
I love that. It's perfect. It's a perfect way to end it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, April, for this conversation. This was such good. I love the good tangible tips. I always love to leave everybody with tangible tips. So this was perfect. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your insight and your time. Thank you.
Absolutely. It was a joy just chatting with you. And I really thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I know how I can provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics that you want to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's at The Hope Pedraza, or visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.